Hello, good morning students. This is Dr. Bijendra Jha. Today we will talk about theory of rights. And if you see the syllabus of PSIR, right, you know that PSIR or any optional paper has two papers, paper 1 and paper 2, and each paper is divided into two sections, section A and section B. Now if you look at section A, it deals with political theory, political thought, right, political ideology. And if you look at section A has 10 topics. There are 10 topics, and topic number 5 is about right, theory of right. Let me show you what is the syllabus that we need to understand. That rights, its meaning, different theory of rights, different kinds of rights, and concept of human rights that we need to discuss, right? I will discuss rights. What is rights? What is the concept called rights? What is rights? And then I will talk about different meaning of rights. For example, social, what is social right? What is civil right? Right? What is economic right? What is moral right? Right? What is called legal right? Right? So we will talk about different meaning of rights. Right? What is called fundamental rights? Fundamental. What is fundamental rights? So we will talk about different meaning of rights, and then after that we will talk about different theory of rights. Now if you look at different theory of rights, there are natural theory of right, natural theory of rights. After natural theory, we can look at utilitarian theory of a right. Utilitarian theory of rights. Then after that we can look at liberal theory of rights. Since liberal theory is related to natural theory, we will see the liberal theory has three parts. One is classical liberal. What classical liberal talks about individual right. Then we will talk about what called positive liberals or modern liberals. Modern liberals talks about rights, and then we will talk about what neoliberal or libertarian talks about right. Right? So we will talk about liberal perspective of right. After that we will talk about some specific philosopher. For example, we will talk about John Rawls. What John Rawls talks about rights, right? We will talk about Donald, Dawkins. What Ronald Dawkins talk about rights, right? Right? And then we will talk about that Robert Nozick. What Robert Nozick talks about rights. Right? So various people, there are three influential people who has given different notion of rights, right? And all belongs to the liberal tradition. of political philosophy or political theory. After dealing with liberal theory of rights, I will talk about what socialist or Marxist conception of rights. What Marxist thinks about right. Marxist concept of rights. Right. So these are the various theory of rights that we need to know. After knowing this all theory of rights, we will come to the one concept called human rights. Right? And we should know what are the human rights. In what context it evolved and become a very famous, right? So we will try to understand human rights, and after that we will talk about the UPSC questions from 2013 to 2021, right? And we will discuss what type of questions has already come, right? And what are the area from which question may come in 2022. So if you are thinking to take PSIR, it would be very helpful. If you are giving mains this time, this would be very helpful, right? So watch it with me. Let's talk about the concept of rights. Look at the concept of rights that we need to talk about. Right? Now if you look at rights, we will talk about what is rights, and then we will also talk about the two concept of rights, that is called, one is negative rights and one is called positive rights. Right? If you see the term right, this is my right, that is popularly used. Recently US Supreme Court has taken away, or you can say denied, women's right to abortion. Right? Recently one high court denied right to abortion to a 25-year young girl, but the Supreme Court accepted right to abortion. Right? We talked about right to privacy. We talked about right to freedom of speech and expression. We talk about right to eat, right to livelihood, right to speech and expression, right to walk. So there are several, right to education, right to information, right? Lots of rights that we talk about. But what this concept is all about. Let's see what is right, what is the concept, right? So let's see what is the concept. Rights. First thing, we must note that rights is a modern concept, a modern political concept. When we say that it is a modern political concept, it means it evolved in modern time, right? For example, it evolved in 16th, 17th, right, 18th, right, 19th, 20th century, still evolving. There are a number of rights people have. Still people are demanding more rights, right? Still people are demanding more rights. Why rights is necessary for any individual, right? If you see that it is a modern concept, then is it that there was no concept in medieval time? I will say there is no such concept. Let me why there is no concept in medieval time. If you look at medieval time, right? Medieval time, there was a concept called, divine right theory. Divine right theory. What is this theory? This theory is all about, that the king is a representative of God on earth, right? So the God has given right to the king only, not to the everyone, right? So everything belongs to the king. But in 16th century, if you see 16th century, 17th century, especially 17th century, right, there are many philosophers who said no, right, nature has made man. Nature has made man, and nature has given equal right to everyone. That the story will come up later on. Let's define what is rights. Now if you see the concept rights is especially a claim, right? I have right to eat, I have right to walk, I have right to shelter, I have right to life, I have right to privacy, I have right to pollution free air and water, right? Several claims I have, and not me, everyone has several claims, right? So you can say right is a claim, but here it's not defined. There are many groups or many people who are unable to claim, but it does not mean right does not belong to them, right? Then this definition will be not suitable. Then right is someone's due of someone. Right is due of someone. For example, I have taken a money from someone, that means he has right over me, right? If someone has taken money or borrowed money from me, then I have due over him. So I should access that due. So due of someone. For example, there are animals unable to claim, but it does not mean animal has no right, right? Animals has right. For example, if you look at environment all around us that are being polluted, right, and the nature unable to speak, right, or perhaps we are unable to hear the mother nature, it does not mean mother nature has no right. The nature has its right. So second definition is due of someone, right? Third definition, right is a set of freedom, a set of freedom, right? So I have defined rights in a three way. Right is a claim. It may be claim against the state, claim against a state, or maybe claim against society, right? For example, in case right to marry, so when you choose someone for your own marriage, it means you have claimed that yes, I can decide about my marriage, right to marry, right? So this is idea about rights. Now let's talk about the two basic division here: positive rights and negative rights. Positive rights and negative rights. Now if you see what is positive rights, what is negative rights, better if we talk about later, but let me talk briefly and then I will come again later on on this classification. Now I told you that rights evolved in 17th 18th century, and it evolved as a someone's claim, right? That claim should not be violated. For example, I have right to life, and my right to life should not be taken away by anyone. Why? Because nature has given me birth, so only I can die in a natural process, right? No one has a right to kill me, right? Even a state, right? So the right to life is a negative right. Right to life is a negative right. State has to protect my life, and the state has not to take away, right? So my right to life is protected. My right to walk, I have natural right, I have to walk. I have to own property. I have to own property. That is natural right, and this right should be protected, cannot be taken away by the state. Right to marry, all comes in under negative right. Now if you see the positive right, so here you can see rights of individual against the state, rights of individual against state, society, whatever. A state cannot intervene in right to life. A state cannot intervene in right to walk. A state cannot intervene in right to property, right? And a state has obligation to protect all these rights, right? It is good for individual and it is good for society, right? Now if you see the rights should not be absolute. Of course, we have to follow the law, right? We have to follow the law. So our rights are protected within the ambit of law, right? Now come to positive rights. What are positive rights? When a state provides something to the society, to the individual, right? For example, right to education, right to health, right to shelter, right to employment. If state is providing this, then this is positive rights which is given by state. So positive, negative, we will take it later again. Now come to the basic theory of rights. Let's see basic theory of rights. Before we go to basic theory of rights, right, let me talk about some basic meaning of rights. For example, I taught you rights, right? It has several dimensions. It has several dimensions, like civil right, like political rights, like social rights, like legal rights. Then it has like moral rights. Then one may you can find, right, we will talk about another constitutional rights, right. Now if you look at this all category of rights, especially civil, political and social, these rights evolved in a period of time. I told you that rights as a concept emerged in 17th 18th century, right? And it also evolved in 19th century, 20th century, and it is evolving again 21st century. Now women are fighting for right to abortion in US, right? And if you think about rights for the unborn child, India is the largest populous state, and this population will use all kind of resources. What we will save for the future generation, do they have rights or not, right? Since they are not born, but think about the future generation, they will come to this earth, do they have some rights? Need to think about, okay? Now look at civil rights. The civil rights emerged in 17th century, right? And here you can see Locke, Hobbes and Locke are the major philosopher who talks about civil rights. Civil right means right to property, right to liberty, right to freedom, right to life. These are the civil right. Right to marry, that is civil right. Right to profess any kind of religion, that is civil right. Right? So civil right means a right due to becoming some member. For example, I am a member of particular community, I have certain rights. I am a member of particular community, I should possess some certain rights. So what should be the basic? Civil rights. Right? Now come to the political rights. If you look at 18th century, right, when the right to vote was extended to the different group. For example, right to vote to working class, right to vote to women. So political rights extended, right? So now right to vote, right to right to be elected. These rights evolved in 18th century. Now you can see here 17th 18th century, these two rights emerged. 17th and 18th century, these two rights, civil and political rights, evolved, right? So in 17th and 18th century, you can see what? Civil and political rights evolved. And if you look at 19th century, this political rights evolved. It was granted, right? For example, right to vote was granted to women, right to vote was granted to other section of the group people. So the political right again here you can see evolved, extended to women. Now we can say that civil and political right is the first set of rights. Civil and political rights are the first set of rights that evolved in 17th, 18th and 19th century. Now if you look at 20th century, you can see social rights. What is social rights? Social rights evolved in 20th century. What is social rights? Social rights evolved out of socialist revolution, socio-economic rights of the people, like right to shelter, right to job, employment, right to food. Now you can see a set of rights that evolved in 20th century, that is called social rights or socio-economic rights. Right, that evolved in 20th century. Now let's come to understand what is legal rights. So I have defined what is civil right and their evolution. I have also talked about political rights and their evolution. Then I have talked about social rights and their evolution. Now come to the legal rights. What is legal right? Right? Legal rights are a set of rights given by the state through the law. Legal rights are a set of rights provided by law. For example, right to information. Right to information is a legal right. Right to education. It is a legal right. Right? Now come to understand what is fundamental right. What is fundamental right? There are some rights or a set of rights which are essential for human being, which are fundamental in nature, without which an individual cannot develop their full personality. A citizen cannot be full citizen. Right? There are a set of rights, right? Or there is a set of rights which are essential for human being to become a good citizen, to live a worthy full life, a dignified life, which is fundamental in nature, that is called fundamental right. If you see the Indian Constitution, there are 6 set of rights. Right? 6 set of rights that are declared as a fundamental right. What are those? I hope you know that those rights. First, right to equality. Second, right to freedom. Third, right against offense or right against protection. Right for protection against arrest and prevention, right? Oh no, right against exploitation. So sorry, that is under, this is under article 14 to 18. This is under article 19 to 22. Then right against exploitation. Right against exploitation. Right? Then if you see fourth right, right against exploitation, then fourth right is right to religion. Then fifth right is that educational and social rights, that educational cultural rights, educational and cultural rights. Then constitutional remedies rights. Fifth, this is sixth, right to constitutional remedies. Now if you see this 6 set of rights given as a fundamental right by the Indian Constitution. Now we got what is civic right, civil right, we got idea what is political right, we got idea about what is social right, we got idea about what is legal right, we know about what is fundamental right. Now we will talk about what is called human rights. Right? Being human, a set of rights are declared through a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR. on December 10, 1948, right? And these rights are called human rights. These rights are available to every person, irrespective of nationality, irrespective of gender, caste, etc. So these are a meaning of rights, different meaning. For example, when you say moral rights, what is meaning of moral? Means correct. Moral means correct. So what are the due, a correct due to the person, that is called moral rights. For example, constitutional rights. Many rights you have received through the constitution, that is called constitutional right. So there could be different meaning of rights. Now once we have talked about different meaning of right, now we will talk about different theory of rights. Different theory of right or theories of rights. What are those theory? First theory is natural theory. Natural theory of rights. What is this all about? I have initiated that, okay, if you see the 17th century, right, there was a contestation between the king and the people, and king proposed divine right theory. The king proposed that I am the representative of God and everything belongs to me, right? I am a ruler, you are ruled. But people have done lots of movement, right? They asserted, no, we have rights, right? Now if you look at Hobbes, what Hobbes talks about, Hobbes said that everybody has equal rights or equal right to liberty, right? He said equal right, and you know that Hobbes, Locke both are social contractualist. When I say social contractualist, it means for them state is out of contract. State is not a natural institution, like Aristotle is proposing, right? Aristotle proposed that state is a natural institution. They said no, state is a product of social contract. So when there is no state, if you see, when there is no authority, then there was no government, and without government it is called a state of nature, and in a state of nature everybody has equal right, that Hobbes said, right? And when state formed, right, the citizens or individual, he talks about individual, I think, so you should discuss individuals transfer their right to political authority, right? Political authority. Now political authority has all rights except in right to life. So individual has right to life, right, when government has formed, but not all right, because he has given all right to the king. But except right to life, he has given all rights, so he has right to life, and he has rights where law prescribes. Whatever the law will say, they will have right under the state. Now come to the Locke. What Locke talk about? Now if you see the Locke, right, he was known as John Locke. John Locke was a great philosopher of Britain, and he proposed that man has right to life, liberty and property. Right? and individual is rational. Individual is rational, right? So individual exercise rights as per their region, and nobody has right to intervene in another's right, right? So as Locke said, individual has a right to life, individual has a right to liberty, individual has a right to property. Individual has also right to legislation, right? To make law, to implement law, to adjudicate law, right? When there is no government, right? That is called a state of nature. But what happens? There is a social contract, and each individual form the government, and individual has given legislative power, implementation power and adjudicative power to the state, but their right to life, liberty and property remain maintained even after the formation of government. Now here see why they are called natural right. If you see either Hobbes or Locke, both said that nature has given birth to individual and they have rights derived from the nature. For example, right to life. The nature has given birth to each individual, so nobody has a right to take away right to life. That is called natural theory of rights. Right? Now look ahead what we are going to talk about. I have talked about this all. Now so he talk about, see, for example, we talk about right to life and liberty. Right and liberty. Individual has a right to life and right to liberty, right to property, right to own. If someone invests labor and earn something, that property belongs to him, right? So that they have right to ownership, right to free will and choice, right to independent thinking, right to speech, right to socialization, right to relationship, right to belief. These all are natural right. Who are the thinkers? Hobbes and Locke. So this is Lockean idea basically. This idea is all about Lockean idea. If you go to the Hobbes will say that, okay, in the state of nature, each individual has right, but after formation of government, individual has right which law permits, and right to life. Only two rights. Legal right, the right which is given by state, and also right to life. And this, because right to life is very important, given by nature. So that's why it is called natural right. Now come to another theory of right that we will talk about, utilitarian theory of right. Now I hope you know what is the meaning of utilitarianism. This philosophy evolved in Britain by Jeremy Bentham. Right? And that idea was carried out by James Mill and his son J.S. Mill. What Bentham talks about? Bentham was a great jurist or great scholar on law. What he talked about utilitarian? He talked about that if government can make some policies that give happiness to the maximum people, then it is okay that we can ignore the minority or few people, right? So government should make policy to satisfy the maximum number of need or you can satisfy the maximum number of, the maximum number of people. So he gave example that, he's given slogan that maximum happiness to the, greatest number. State should make policy, right, or any law that will be benefit to the maximum number. And if, few people, get not advantage, that's fine. But government should make law or frame policy so that it can benefit to the largest number, right? Now, if you look at this policy was very popular, right? This idea was very popular that government should make law that should benefit to maximum number. Let me give you an example, right? In a practical life, right? You are a driver of a train. This is a train and you are a driver, and this is a track, right? And again next you can see here the again track, right? That is diverting, again here track is diverting here. Now you are a driver, pilot of this train, and your train is moving. Now you are able to see that 5 people are sleeping on the track, right? Now you were intended to move here, but now you are looking for alternative either on this track or this track. Now here you can see 2 people are sleeping here on this track and only 1 people are sleeping on this track. Tell me where you will divert your train. Your answer will be definitely, sir, I will divert train to this. But your train was intended to this side, but you have saved maximum and sacrificed minimum, right? Anyway, so that is his philosophy, utilitarian, greatest happiness to the greatest number. Now his student J.S. Mill gave a different idea of rights, and he established a relationship between utility and rights, and he gave 6 characteristics of rights. What is right? And so he said legal right. What J.S. Mill thinks about, everything which is provided by the law is right. Right? Everything provided by rights, every law is rights. For example, right to education, right to information. Then he talks about moral rights. If you see, there are some moral thing, but in practice we can see that many law is not morally correct. Now, if that is not the thing, then that should be not applicable. So, for example, IPC 377, Indian Penal Code, that that used to criminalize homosexuality. Now, morally it was wrong, right? Now, this is not right. Now, come to desert. If people deserve something, that should belong to whom, that is their rights. Then he talked about contract. If someone has done contract and that belongs to that person, there should be rights. Now he said impartiality, right? State should not partialate, everyone should get right. Then he said equality, everyone should be treated equal. In this way he gave idea of utilitarian right. Now his idea was rejected by Ronald Dworkin. He wrote a book, and that book name is Taking Rights Seriously. What he called, let's see, right? He opposed the idea of utilitarian theory of rights, and he said, I read, right, I quote, if someone has a right to something, then it is wrong for the government to deny it to him even though it would be a general interest to do so. He said, okay, fine, if government making law, but if something belongs to someone, government should not deny to that person, right? And he said that right, we must concern right to equality, right to equality of concern, equality of concern. For example, everyone has right to remedy, right to medicine, right to health, for example. But if you see, if you are going on road and you see that one person met accident and other person is also not well, right? So you found 2-3 people, but one people is need more help, then it is necessary to help the person who needs more help, right? He said we should keep more concern about equality of concern and respect. If you see, I'm in hospital, you are also in hospital, but I may die without medicine, but someone may, that medicine will be helpful to someone also. Dworkin said, give medicine to those who are badly needed. Those who are badly needed. Right. So examples, how we are in urgent to access those rights, then right should be given. And he said also that, there should be some rights against the state, protect his interest, right? And that he called fundamental right. There are some rights that should be fundamental, right? And he gave slogan that right as trump. He said right is good for the society, like right to abortion, right to privacy, right? And he said, right against government is very important. Right against government is very important because the society is based on majority and minority, right? And in democracy, if you see, what is government is rule of majority. So minority rights should be protected. That was a response of Donald Dworkin to the utilitarian. Now look at another theory. So we have done utilitarian theory of rights. Now come to liberal theory of rights. Right? We have talked about various. Now we need to just categorize. For example, we talk about liberal theory of rights. What liberal theory of rights talks about? Right? Who are the exponent of liberal theory of rights? Again, John Locke. Here, John Locke, Jeremy Bentham, then J.S. Mill, right? They talk about rights and they said that individual has freedom. Remember the third notion of definition, rights as a freedom, a set of freedom. So individual has freedom, right? Freedom to possess, freedom, freedom to ownership, freedom to walk, freedom to read, write, freedom to think, right? Freedom to start new business, right? And they give priority to individual freedom. Individual freedom, right? That is their basic idea. And they said that a state must be in limited sense, right? For example, take the Adam Smith. Adam Smith, who gave idea of laissez-faire state, that means limited state. limited state. A state should be limited. What does it mean? That a state only, establish security, and a state should provide safeguard. A state should provide safeguard, a state provides security. Then a state, provide, enforce law, right? And the rest of things, a state should give in to the individual. A state should not come in the market to regulate the market, right? Let the individual, start entrepreneurship, let the market regulate itself. And what Adam Smith says, market always regulate itself through individual hand, right? So individual has a right to exercise their freedom, right? And a state must be limited. A state should not intervene in the rights of individual, right? And these are the liberal theory of rights. Who has given this theory? John Locke, Jeremy Bentham, J.S. Mill, Adam Smith, right? Many one. Now if you look at, this is the liberal concept theory, the modern liberal. This was the classical liberal. The classical liberal talks about limited state. And individual freedom. Individual freedom to own anything and free market. Now look at modern liberals, right? The modern liberals thought that no, a state should intervene. A state should intervene, right? Individual rights should not be absolute, right? How state should intervene? A state should intervene through certain welfare program. For example, state should manage, right, the resources and generate revenue and go, state should give a right to education. For example, a state should give right to health. A state should give right to shelter. A state should give, right to social security. What is social security? For example, pension. Pension is social security. So, and who are the philosophers? Lasky, right? T.H. Green, right? L.T. Hobhouse. These are the philosophers who thought about that no, state should intervene in order to, access certain rights, right? And let's see a few best quotation from Lasky. Rights are those conditions of life without which no man can seek in general to be at his best. He said, every state is known by the rights it maintains. Again he said, rights are claimed, not empty of duties. Again he said, the social order which is not based on recognition of rights, man is based on sand. So these are the modern liberals about rights. Now come to Marxist conception of rights. What Marx thought about rights, right? If you see the Marxist concept, Marx thought that right is a bourgeois concept. It is a bourgeois concept, right? And the concept has been designed in order to serve the capitalist, the bourgeois. right? The rich people. Why it is a bourgeois concept? He said that rights are protected by the law. Rights are protected by the law. And who made the law? Right? Who are in the parliament? If you talk about Indian parliament, out of 10, 9 MPs are crorepati. 9 MPs are crorepati out of 10 in the current parliament, 17th parliament. That is 2019 to 2024. Right? So rights are protected by the law, and who make the law? It is only state legislature which make the law, and state is nothing but serve the interest of the bourgeoisie, right? And that is why rights as a concept is a bourgeois concept, right? So Marx's idea of rights are totally different from the liberal idea. Now I have talked about natural theory of rights, I have talked about utilitarian theory of rights, I have talked about liberal theory of rights, I have talked about Marxist theory of rights. Now let's see few individual who talks about rights. Now look at John Rawls, what he talks about rights. John Rawls in his book Theory of Justice try to make a balance between liberty and equality, right? Freedom and equality. Right? He gave that each person in the society has equal right. He said each person of the society has equal right to freedom, right? Each person has equal right to freedom. Fine. And again he said that all social and economic inequality should be arranged so that it benefits to the poor, it benefits to the marginal class, and all office and position should be open to all under condition of fair equality and opportunity. Now if you know the Rawlsian theory of justice, it would be very easy for you, but if you don't know the Rawlsian idea of justice, you may face little difficulty, right? He said that every person have equal right to liberty. Now I am free to play game, you are free to play game. For example, I am free to teach, you are free to teach. I am free to study, you are also free to study. So each person has equal liberty, equal freedom, right? At the same time, the government should give a reservation to the people who are disadvantaged, for example SC, ST. Therefore, and he said he given few principle, right? Principle 1, principle 2, principle 3, and he said that government should follow all these principles, and if you follow this principle, then society would be based on a just society, a fair society. His idea was rejected by Robert Nozick, right? And he gave a different theory of rights that is called entitlement theory of rights or libertarian theory of rights. Wow, what he said that if a person acquires any property by the just means, then he has right to over that. For example, if I am doing work and I am getting rupees 10, then I have right over that rupees 10. This is political theory, right? So if the initial acquisition, if I have worked one day and earned 10 rupees, then I have right over the 10 rupees. Secondly, I have also right to transfer this 10 rupees or out of 10, 5 rupees to someone, right? So I have right to own by the just mean, I have right to transfer, right? These two principles he applied, and he said the rest application is all bogus. Basically he was criticizing Rawls, because Rawls gave very a pattern theory of justice, a systematic theory of rights. Fine. Now come to the idea that we have talked about. Now come to the idea of human right. Now if you look at the human right, it is a very a very important concept. And if you know, on December 10, 1948, the UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, declared UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that Human Declaration of Human Rights, if you see, this is 3-page document. If you go to this page, 3 pages, you find one preamble, and it has 30 articles, 1 to 30 articles, and it recognizes certain freedom, certain equality, certain rights to all individuals around the globe, irrespective of ideology, irrespective of religion, race, caste, sex, nationality, and so on, right? And that's why if you look at 10 December is celebrated as International Human Rights Day. Now this human rights UDHR recognizes that each individual are equal and having equal moral worth. It recognizes right to thought, right to information, press, speech, religion, movement, association, assembly, large number of rights. Let's talk about in detail. Now if you see the human right, as I talked about, the human right has been declared by United Nations General Assembly on December 10, 1948, and it has 30 articles, Article 1 to Article 30, and Article 1 states that all human beings have equal worth. Second, said that that each individual, irrespective of their nationality, religion, sex, race, caste, gender, religion, nationality, have certain rights. Now if you look at the more other, we can divide, and I have divided that there are 24 rights declared by UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 24 rights recognized by UDHR, and that can be categorized in different way. For example, security rights, political rights, liberty rights, due process of rights, equality rights, F welfare rights, G group rights. It gives this this 7 category of rights, that is UDHR. Now if you look at the 3 generation of human rights, the 3 generation of rights concept was given by Vasak, Karl Vasak. He was a great jurist from Czechoslovakia, and he has given 3 generation of human rights, right? What are 3 generation of human rights? We know that, I have already explained, just we need to understand. First generation of rights is civil and political right, that evolve in 18th and 19th century. 18th and 19th century. When we initiated our class, I talked about civil and political rights. Then what are the second generation of rights? He talks about, social rights. Social rights evolved in 20th century. Right? For example, various rights you can, for example, right to health, right to education, right? For example, if you see the DPSP of Indian Constitution, it all social rights. If you talk about fundamental right of Indian Constitution, this is all about civil and political rights. Then third is solidarity rights. Solidarity or collective rights. This is third generation of rights or human rights. For example, right to environment. It is a collective one. It is, important for everyone. Right? Solidarity rights. Right to environment. Sustainable rights. Sustainable development rights. Right? Peace right. Now if you see the Ukraine-Russia war, the entire, irrespective of the nationality, people are fighting for the peace and says no to war. Right? So sustainable development rights, peace right, and if you see environmental rights, these all rights are third generation of rights. Right? Now the one more right is called multicultural right. What is multicultural right? Lots of rights have been discussed. I don't know whether you are able to consume it or not, right? Lots of rights I have talked about. Let's see the multicultural right. Now if you see the entire world, the society has evolved as a multicultural society. For example, US is a multicultural society. Canada is a multicultural society. India is a multicultural society. When I say multicultural society, it means there are plurality in that society. There are diversity in that society. There are different sects of people, different, people have different, opinion, different culture, different practices, different way of life, right? So this multiculturalist thinks that the modern state must recognize, group rights. For example, LGBT rights. Or minority rights. Who are the exponent of this multicultural rights? There are two, exponent that I would like to talk about. One is Vikku Parekh, a great renowned philosopher, and other is Willy Kimlicka. Now if you look at Vikku Parekh, he writes a book, Rethinking Multiculturalism. He said, the modern world is becoming multicultural because if you look at, there are lots of, free flow of people. For example, if you see the US, the people from around the globe has reached US or UK, and different people are living from the different part of the world, right? And a uniform set of law or uniform set of rights would be disturbing, right? Because something Indian may celebrate, but that for European that not should, that European may not celebrate the same. So there are different set of people coming from different part of the world. So a state should not form a uniform law or uniform rights, right? We need to recognize, a particular group right. If you look at Canada, in Canada, army are allowed to wear turban, right? So group rights. Now if you look at, there are many people who lives their own way of life, for example LGBT or gay or lesbian, right? They want to live their own way of life, and the state must recognize their rights, right? So he is talking about state should not give a uniform right to everyone. The group right must be recognized. Now come to Will Kemlicka, what he talked about. He talked about group differentiated rights, same, right? What is the group differentiated rights? He talks about three set of rights. One is territorial autonomy rights, and he said if there are certain territory, for example Canada has a large territory, right? But certain territory is dominated by certain community. For example, the Quebec in Canada, populated by French. Now Will Kemlicka says that the state should give self-autonomy rights. For example, Jammu and Kashmir in India, populated by Muslim, a majority is Muslim. Will Kemlicka will say that, okay, the Kashmir should have self-autonomy right, Kashmir should govern themselves, right? Second, he said the veto power. The minority must have some special cultural or ethnic rights, right? If there are small minority, for example, we have Parsi community. The Parsi community or Jain community or Sikh community, that are the minority community. This minority community must have certain special rights to exercise. Now if you look at third set of rights, he talked about guaranteed special representation. Will Kemlicka talks about the particular group must have representation. If I give you example, if you see the Anglo-Indian, the Anglo-Indian had representative in Indian Parliament because they are not able to elect representative because they are in minority. So Will Kemlicka talks about three kinds set of rights: self-government of rights, ethnic rights, and special representation rights that minority should access. Now I have talked about Viku Parekh. So we talked about multicultural rights. Now look at the question of UPSC that has been asked from 2013 to from 2021. Look at the first question. Can there be a universal conception of human rights? Can we talk about a universal conception of rights? Can it be exercised? This is a question, right? So we know that human rights has been framed by UDHR, United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution, right, through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But can universal right be universal? That is the question. If it is a universal right, who will enforce it? Is there any governments, the world government, who can enforce the right? Now you can give argument, right? So this is the question. Now assess the significance of right to property in political theory. We talked about right to ownership, right to property, right? Here Locke is very important. And you can talk about Norbert Nozick, entitlement theory of right, if I have acquired something with the just means, that belongs to mine, that is my property. Right? Now, discuss the doctrine of right as a trump. This is purely Dawkins' theory of right. He talks about right as a trump. Right is always good, like right to abortion, right to privacy, right to liberty, right? And individual must have right against the government, because in today's democracy, the government is government of the majority, right? In that case, the individual rights must be protected. Now, fourth, what do you understand about the 3 generations of human rights? We talked about 3 generations of human rights. You can write. The fifth, what do you understand about the concept of multiculturalism? Discuss Bhikkhu Parekh's view on multiculturalism. I talked about what do you mean by multiculturalism, and also talked about the Bhikkhu Parekh's argument in his book Rethinking Multiculturalism. Now, sixth, the implementation of human rights is regarded as a matter of changing the conduct of the state. We talked about. Now, comment on the idea of natural right. We talked about. Analyze the relation between natural right and human rights. Then explain, Berlin's notion of value pluralism. Right? It's a very old idea. Right? So you see again from 2013 to 2021, you can understand. And if you ask me, sir, what kind of question this time come, depends on. It depends on. Just you need to, command over the various theory of rights. And if you have commands over the various theory of rights, it's very easy to write answer. Thank you so much. See you sometime.